This episode of the FITFO podcast is brought to you by Battle Bars, premium protein bars that will help you fuel your fight. All natural ingredients, no artificial sugars. Check them out at www.battlebars.com. Okay, good morning, everyone. Happy December 18th. Another very cold day. I am surrounded by snow up to my windows here, and I can feel the breeze coming through the window, so I'm already chilly. Today, we're talking with Trevon Ferguson. Trevon, how do I say your middle name? Is it Sundiata?
Yes.
Nailed it. Okay, great. That's awesome. So this morning we have Trayvon. So Trayvon is with Operation Enduring Warrior. He is a veteran. He's everything. I don't even want to get into really all your titles because I think it's better if you tell me and those who listen to us. So with that, good morning, Trayvon. How you doing?
Good morning. Good morning. Now, is it Captain Sparks?
It is. It is. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm debating calling it quits.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if
Okay.
I'll make it major, but we'll see. My knee's falling apart, and you know how it is. At some point, I think your brain hits a spot where you're just like, nope, I'm done. I
I understand. I
yeah,
understand.
yep, but yeah,
But I'm doing fantastic. I absolutely appreciate you guys giving me an opportunity to be on the platform. It's been a journey to today,
hmm
and today's actually a special day for me too. So
okay,
it's funny because today, on the exact date, which is the 18th, and the day, which was a Friday, in 1994, was when I migrated to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago, which is where I was born and raised.
wow. Wait,
Um,
today, like
it's
today's the actual
significant,
day. That's incredible.
absolutely.
Wow. Well, that's awesome. I think I told you my parents are actually immigrants. So
Okay.
I was the firstborn in the United States from my family side. So I definitely I can appreciate and understand just what that entails. It's a quite a step. That's awesome. What are the odds that today would be the day we decide to do this too? That
Exactly,
wasn't planned. I
exactly.
swear.
I, well, it worked out. It worked out
It
perfectly.
did.
And it,
Well, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So, if you don't mind, I mean, can we just start about like where you came from and a little bit about your home country and then what kind of motivated you to come here? I'd love to hear that.
Sure, definitely, definitely. So again, I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, and I always give this because a lot of people ask me, well, is a lot of people's response when I say that
Mm.
is that in Jamaica? No, it's its own separate island. And in fact, if you were to follow the chain of islands from Cuba all the way down in the Caribbean, the very last island, which is just off the coast of South America, is Trinidad and Tobago. So it's two islands, one country, and so I actually was born and raised there, went through high school there, and then migrated in December of 94. And before that, though, my mom and my dad, they migrated years before that.
Mm.
And of course, when you talk about immigration, back then the immigration laws were a little bit different.
Sure.
So it was a lot entry, especially from the Caribbean, was a lot easier. So they came and they got themselves established. My mom is now deceased, but both my parents are naturalized U.S. citizens.
Mhm.
And then my younger sister and I, we followed in December of '94. And for me, that was always the plan. I mean, once my parents left to open a door of opportunity. And when people hear or talk about the American dream, it's not just the house with the picket fence, right? I
Sure.
mean, from all across the globe, people look at the United States as a place of hope. We can go there and we can get the education that we need. We can find the work that we need so that we can now look back and make a difference in our home countries. And I heard somebody say one time that there's no such thing as the British dream, and that's not a knock on Great Britain. It just speaks to what it is and why people want to come to the United States in terms of creating opportunity. And that's what my mom wanted for us. And so in December of '94, I migrated, and it was pretty interesting because I had visited a few times before, but I'd never been in the winter. It was always in the summertime. So imagine getting off a plane, don't have any winter clothes, but thankfully my mom came pretty prepared, so she had
Good.
bought me some jackets and stuff like that. That was like literally walking out of the because we were green card holders as I was sharing, and so we had to go through a little interview, my sister and I, and when we walked out, my mom and dad were waiting outside for us. She had her jackets, and my mom completely not thinking about it, like stood there hugging on us, and we're freezing.
Yeah.
I mean, rest her soul. It was interesting, but we were pretty cold. Um,
I can't imagine
and
that
then about
culture
a week
shock.
later, I really started kind of my journey. So I had a friend who had already moved to New York probably about a year before from Trinidad, and he was working. So I literally got a job within a week of getting here,
Wow.
which was so interesting to me because sometimes when you look at the news report, so I'm new, I'm sitting there watching TV with my dad, and they're talking about like the unemployment rate, and then I'm asking myself, well, how was I able to come and get. I mean, granted, my friend basically connected me, but
Mm,
still, I always kind of question when people tell me they can't um, find work.
sure.
So I started working at this company called Curtains and Homes. They were like a catalog company, right? Where kind of like Finger Hut,
Right.
but
Okay.
and they were out in Plainview, Long Island. And here's the dynamic of what was so unique about that. The company was inside of a mall, like on one end of the mall, had a warehouse type setup. And my friend and I were the only two black guys that worked in the entire mall. Not in that company, but in the entire
Oh,
mall.
wow.
So it was a unique and interesting dynamic. I think it was my first clear experience dealing with racial issues because every morning when I would I had to walk through the mall. There
Mhm.
was this jewelry store that I would walk through, and I remember one morning, one of the girls hit the silent alarm as I was walking through the mall. So when I came out on the other side,
Wow.
the cops showed up, and they had to go get my manager. So that was like my first.
That's awful. And I mean, I
That
was
was
gonna ask you, I mean, was that like were you a little bit, because I mean, I can imagine if I was in your shoes, and obviously I'm not, but I can imagine that'd be one, a little scary to begin with, and then that something like that happens. That's so stereotypical. But
it, it was scary, but I was more confused than anything else because I was like, well, why is this happening? Right.
sure.
And then, so I told them who I was, and they went. There was a female cop there. She walked over to the store that I worked at and got my manager, and they cleared everything up. And I think honestly, I'm 6'2" now. I'm 6'2", 232 pounds now. I mean, I wasn't this big, but the typical profile is, you see a kid with a black kid with Timberlands and jeans and a South Pole bubble jacket with a beanie on, and there's okay, stereotypical, okay, he's either in a gang or something of that nature.
Mm,
And I think the young lady, she'd seen me walk through the store a couple of times heading to work, and probably made some assumptions. And that morning, for whatever reason, she was scared. And so that was my first experience with any type of racism here in the
mm,
United States. But I mean, it didn't change my opinion of wanting to be here or anything like that. And so that was, let me see, that happened like just after New Year's in '95 in January, and maybe 4.5 months later. So exactly 6 months to the day of me arriving. So May 18th of '95, I left New York and went to basic training. So somewhere in that 6 month time, I had decided that I was going to join the U.S. Army, and I had multiple reasons for that. It was kind of twofold. So one, um, I had gotten accepted to Howard University,
mm,
and so, but my parents weren't in a financial position to pay the difference of what. So I played soccer as well. So even getting a partial scholarship, it still wasn't enough to cover. I mean, we know.
Yeah,
colleges.
it's out of control, and I mean, even back then, still
Yeah.
30 years ago, 20 years
So
ago.
I was looking for options. The military was one. Back, I don't know if you remember this, but back then the commercials on TV, it was be all you can be.
Oh, yeah.
In the Army. That was the prevalent commercial, and I had caught sight of that and started piquing my interest. And then I met a in fact, I met I met my recruiter. This is so funny. I met my recruiter at a social event. At the time, I didn't, you know, had no clue she was in the army. And then we got to talking about what she did for work, and then she invited me down to the recruiting station and like coaxed me into doing the ASVAB practice test. So I did the practice test and scored ridiculously high on the practice test. And so the guy who was over the entire recruiting station was like, man, you literally could get any job in the military you want with that score. So I started thinking, I was like, well, and they were offering at the time, if you were not a US citizen, they were offering the $25,000 for the GI Bill. So I said, well, you know what? That was an option for me to get to school. So um, sauntered along and decided to put my name to the paper. And and then and when I picked my job, um, you know, I tried to pick something that would stay close to what I wanted to do for my major, which was architecture. So I picked something called field artillery surveying. At the time, I really didn't know what it was until I got there. But um, like you see a lot of civil engineers on the streets and stuff like that. My job title i- was and description was is similar to that,
Okay,
although it had more to do with weapon system than roads.
sure.
But they use the same equipment, like the theodolite, which is the leveling instrument that they use to make sure that the roads are a certain level and things of that nature. So I would say that at the time it was probably the last thing that I wanted to do. But now, in spite of my injuries and everything that has transpired 20 plus years later, I don't regret having served. I would, and even today, if I could go back and do it all over again, I probably would. I have the honor of saying that my beautiful sister who lives in Florida is also a veteran, a Navy veteran,
Hmm.
and she's now a police officer. I have two older brothers who are now deceased that were veterans. And what's ironic about that is it's not something that was planned. It just happened that we all ended up serving. And now my son is at the Air Force Academy.
Wow,
Um,
that's a big deal.
and
That's awesome.
here's what's so powerful about that. I watched this kid from day one, and he was actually accepted to all three military academies. He just
Wow.
happened to choose the Air Force. I mean, it's that in itself. I was talking to him yesterday. I still kind of sit back and it blows me away because I mean he runs track and the boy has a very what I would call sick, intense work ethic about him. And so when we got the first letter that West Point wanted him to come for one of their leadership programs, okay. And then 2 days later, we got an invite from the Naval Academy, and then one to come tour the Air Force Academy. And of course he had some offers from Texas Tech and a couple other schools, and we were like, okay, great. And it wasn't something that I was nudging him to do in terms of what I wanted him to do. I wanted him to choose based on his career path. So my son is his major is biochemical engineering. So I told him, I said, well, hey, you have to kind of, I want you to chart your course. So he um he found out that even after he got accepted to West Point didn't have that specific major available. So that kind of eliminated them. So then it came down to the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy. And the Air Force Academy won out because he runs track and he was dealing with a hip injury. And of course, they talked to him about getting him to see their doctors and all this good stuff. So they pretty much won out. But again, not something that was planned, nothing scripted. It's just it's an honor to serve because when I think about it, our service affords every citizen in this country, whether we agree with them or not, the rights and privileges that come with being a citizen of the United States. And so, that's something I'm forever humbled and honored to have done here. Jumping forward, let's see. So I went on active duty in May of '95, and then my life trajectory sort of changed in January of '96. I was actually involved in a horrific vehicular Humvee accident on a training exercise. Uh, Busted up my knee pretty good.
Ugh.
My lower back was hurt. Suffered a traumatic brain injury, which at the time, you know, I didn't know. All I knew is I went to, they took me to the hospital. They patched me up, gave me some 800 milligram Motrin, and I was back to work within 2 days.
Of
You
course.
know, and but after that, some things started changing. I started having constant headaches like every single day to the point where having headaches or migraines every day became the norm. It's like, oh yeah, my head hurts today, but you just put through uh, nosebleeds. My right pupil after that accident never closed back to its original size. So there were some issues with light sensitivity and a host of other issues. Um, Change in temperament, which at the time I had no idea that brain injuries could cause shift in emotional changes. And of course, now I do, now that I understand what, for example, football players go through with the whole CTE epidemic that we're seeing with them. But and thankfully I was able to finish. So I ended up doing right at 7 years, re-enlisted twice, went to Germany, got stationed in Germany, did some deployments to Southeast Asia and things of that nature. And then the the deciding factor for me was that after I got back to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I'd gotten to the point where, like you, not only was I just tired, but I was tired of the pain because I was living with pain every single day. But of course, when it comes to the mission, you just get up and you just drive on, as they say, suck it up and drive on, right?
Yep.
You keep moving, and I was sort of tired of that. I wanted to. I wanted to start up my own business. I wanted to actually finally use my GI Bill to go to school, and but I didn't take that particular path. I never ended up going to Howard. I did get a degree from Cameron University in engineering design, which is in Lawton, Oklahoma, where Fort Sill is. And you know, the scary thing for me is that I shudder to think what happens to veterans who don't have the support that I've had to be able to navigate as far as I have with the complications that I have. So, for example, 2 years ago, in May of 28, well, just over 2 years, in May of 2018, um, I was at work, had a seizure, and I'll be honest, I denied it because I had never had any complications or any issues with seizures or anything of that nature. So I had the seizure. They brought me home, and then a few days later, about 4 days later, I had a second one. And after the second one, then it was multiple times every day after that. And so I was ultimately diagnosed with epilepsy. And again, even that was a denial. I mean, my wife and I, we were scared. We were confused. We didn't know what was happening. Um, they're pumping me full of medication. Nothing nothing seems to be working, and it's kind of what drives me today because I understand in my case, as hard as it was for my wife to have to be a caregiver and navigate the road. Imagine what happens to those veterans whose families say, well, we can't deal with this or we don't want to deal with this, and they leave them. or they kick him out. And because I have a philosophy that there should not be one homeless veteran in this country, but that's how it happens. It usually happens because the family members are not equipped to handle what we bring home when
Well,
we come home.
and that too, and plus for how many years the VA and other doctors were throwing opioids at people that we now know are killers, and these people turn to drug addicts and then they become homeless. And I know a lot of veterans they fall into that category. They dull the pain with drugs.
Right.
It's just such a it's just a mess. It really is.
It is. It is.
So
It is.
when you had that first seizure, you said you didn't really know, or how did it come about? Like, what was the physical reaction that you had in your case? Because I know it varies, and I imagine it's directly tied to the TBI. So I'm
Right.
just kind of curious on how when it set in that something was happening, or did you even realize it?
So what happened was that day, all that day, I just wasn't feeling right. My
Hmm,
head just didn't feel good. But of course, remember I told you I always have headaches every day. So I'm not thinking, well, anything is wrong. I'm just like, well, it's par for the course. I'm used to it. My wife had been talking to me about, going to the VA and stuff like that. And I'll be honest with you, 100%. I had gotten to a point where I didn't even want to deal with it. I
sure.
didn't, I wouldn't tell people I was a veteran. I wouldn't talk about it. My wife would talk about it and she would encourage me to, but for a while, was just angry and frustrated at how that whole broken system was. And so that day, I wasn't feeling well. I remember going to work and I remember telling one of my supervisors, like, man, I don't feel so good today. So, and of course, it's like, hey, can you make it through? Whatever, whatever. All right, great. I go and I'm operating heavy equipment.
Oh, good.
I get off of one of the equipment. I see one of my coworkers. I said, "Hey, I don't feel so good." And then next thing I know, I wake up. I'm on a gurney inside of an ambulance heading to the hospital,
Ooh.
and they're telling me that I had a seizure. And I'm like, "What? No, okay." We get to the emergency room. Of course, they make sure I'm stable, and then um, you know, no more seizure activity detected. So they sent me home, and then they told me to go follow up with different doctors and so on and so on. And then the second one, my wife and I were at home, and we were fussing about something, and it. I remember she walked out of the room, and then when I came to again, there was a paramedic standing in the living room. And from what she said, we were going back and forth. And then she said she walked out of the room and she started hearing this noise and she thought I was coughing. And then when she came back in, I was having a seizure.
Oh,
And so, and from that point onwards, it was, multiple times a day. And so for me, I denied it for a while. I kept saying, there's no way I have epilepsy. And it's just not possible. um, then we had to, of course, go through all the protocols, MRIs, um, in-home EEGs at the doctor's office, all this stuff, and and of course, finally the diagnosis was made, and then of course they plugged me full of this medication, and that's the other thing. The medication, which most seizure medications, actually one of the side effects is depression. I'm already struggling with anxiety, PTSD, you name it.
mhm.
And then they give you this medication. And I was on five different medications at one time, and none of them were working. I mean, none of them were working. In fact, the last medication, I never forget this one because it's crazy. Aptium. Imagine, if you will, one of my triggers was pain, and one of the side effects of that particular medication is chest pain. Like,
Okay, of
okay, so the
course.
irony of that,
Why wouldn't it be?
right?
Ridiculous. It's like the medications too. They're like, it's to solve some kind of severe issue. It's like, hey, it may cause all these symptoms that are basically the same disease, also death. It's just
Right,
it's
right.
crazy. How you supposed to deal with that? Now, how
It's
how did you how did you start to feel? I mean, I guess if you want to continue, I'm curious how you truly started to medicate that, or if you found a way to do that in a better way.
So let me say this: my wife is the queen of research. So I call her Queen Google, and she had started researching, looking for answers because we weren't getting answers from the doctors. I mean, they were just basically giving us the cookie cutter speech of, hey, this is you do this medication, don't do this, all the telling me all the things that I can no longer do and stuff like that. And so my wife has started researching the keto diet, specifically because that's what that was formulated for people with brain health issues. And I remember, uh, and to just be 100% transparent,
Mhm.
I had made the decision that I was gonna take my own life,
Oh,
because you have to remember I was already living with pain before that, and that was bad enough. But with the seizures, the amount of pain, you're talking about literally being in tears because the pain is so intense. And uh, and, and and to paint a picture for the audience, imagine, if you will, having like a Charlie horse or a muscle cramp from head to toe, like your entire body hurts that type of way all the time.
right.
And um not only that, I'm taking this medication that's increasing my depression, thoughts of suicide, all that, and it's just sinking lower and lower and lower and lower. Now, then you're being told, well, you can't drive, you can't do something as simple as take a bath, you can't go swimming, you can't do this, you can't do that.
Your freedom,
And
basically.
but exactly,
Yep.
exactly. That's exactly it. And what type of quality of life is that, right? So, and then the day I made the decision, a friend of ours who worked with a sports nutrition supplement company called me, and he said, "Hey, I got something. I think you ought to try it." Now, keep in mind, when he called me, he had no idea that I had decided that I was gonna commit take my life. But he called and he said, "Hey, I got something." Talked to my wife. We all ordered some, and it was a actual keto coffee.
Okay.
And so my wife got excited because she had been doing the research, and she said, "Hey, I had just been researching the benefits of keto for individuals who have epilepsy and all that stuff." So we got the product in and we tried it, and we noticed that we actually literally noticed an immediate difference. In fact, I got the product in. I had the coffee that evening, right? I mean, at that point I was desperate. I mean, it couldn't hurt anything.
Sure.
And then the next morning I had another cup. And what I noticed, the first thing I noticed was that um, I didn't have a headache the next day, right?
Mhm.
It's like, okay, that was a first. The second thing I noticed was that my energy levels were up. So normally when I would have a seizure, I think just having one seizure would be like a 3 to 4 day recovery. So imagine having back to back seizures in one day and then
Can't
having them
imagine.
every day. So there was like no recovery period, right?
No.
And so, and then we noticed that my energy level was so high. I wasn't in as much pain as I normally would be. Showed up at my wife's job twice that day, and she was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And then we realized, well, the only thing that had changed was that I had started to drink the coffee, and so I even started doing some research and getting an understanding of how the MCT oils and how the healthy fats, how they work for the brain. Well, we kind of push forward with that. And now remember, I'm all this time I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I don't want to deal with the VA. So are you familiar with Zig Ziglar?
I'm only familiar with the title, as in I've seen other people mention it. I don't have any awareness of what it entails exactly.
Okay. So Zig Ziglar was a premier motivational speaker. Now he passed away probably about 8 years ago in 2012. But I got a chance to meet him in person before he passed away, and have stayed friends with his family. So I went by the headquarters of his company, and I said, I was kind of catching up with them and sharing with them, hey, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, but I'm getting a little bit of relief. I'll continue to fight through it. And then they said to me, hey, guess what? We have a friend that works with an organization that works with people who have unique injuries. Maybe you should, check him out. Well, I went to check out the place, and it was a gym called the Adaptive Training Foundation, where they have this 9-week program where they put you through uh, really, really intense workout regimen that's geared towards achieving specific goals related to your own individual pathology. So each athlete in the class has their own unique program for the 9 weeks, and then at the end of the 9 weeks, for another week, they take you on a trip somewhere to kind of test some of those things. So, for example, like in my class, I was the first person that ever had epilepsy to go through the program. But we had a gentleman that had suffered a stroke, single leg amputees who had been in that car accident. We had a young lady who had a spinal cord injury from a boogie board accident 4 days after her wedding, things like that. And so we went through that. And that program, though, it's not just the physical, it's spirit, mind, and body. So they challenge you in all those areas. And in fact, going through that program, one of the challenges I had was that the founder, the CEO, um, he challenged me to go get counseling. Like that was one of the things that I had to do. There was no option. All right. And so I ended up going through 22 Kill, which is another awesome program for veterans that provides counseling. Now, 22 Kill, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they were founded because the statistics were saying that every day we lose 22 veterans to suicide. So they were founded initially to create awareness. However, now they don't just create awareness, they have counseling programs, they have events for veterans and first responders and their family to in the effort to try to get that number down to zero. Like it's a constant work in progress, right? And so I went through their counseling program and really kind of found my footing. And shortly after completing my first round of that program, I got connected to OEW. I heard about OEW, and I went on after being told by the doctors, "Hey, you can't do this. You shouldn't do this." Going through the program at the Adaptive Training Foundation last year, I actually went on to complete my first Spartan races. As you can see, I'm wearing my
Yeah.
Spartan
Yeah.
beanie. Went on to do that. I did 5 Spartan races last year, over 30 something 5Ks, and so I kind of found my footing in running. And then I got introduced to archery, and then this year I went back through the program again in January because they have a version of it called Military to the Mountain, where the entire class is only veterans. And going back through that, and right when we graduated from the class and we were supposed to go on our trip, the pandemic hit. Well, after that, we were all of us were looking for different things in the digital space. Like, how do we navigate right now? So now we go from mental health is a critical thing in our community, and then the pandemic hits and it even becomes a bigger problem. And so when that happened, I had been talking to a gentleman who was in part of OEW, and we've been talking about all the things that they offer. Obviously, at that point, because of the pandemic, we couldn't, do anything. But he kept encouraging me, "Hey, sending your paperwork." So I sent it in, and it's been a super awesome because partnering with OEW is like an extension of what the Adaptive Training Foundation offers. So the Adaptive Training Foundation helps you redefine. In fact, that's the name of the program, redefine um, the parameters of who you are and how you see yourself. So you go in there and you've been told, "Oh, you'll never walk again," or "You can't do this," or "You shouldn't do this." I'm also a multi-digit amputee. I'm missing three fingers. My left arm was severely damaged because it was crushed in a winch, and I was told, "Well, you wouldn't be able to do um, pull-ups, push-ups, all these different things." I was told I wouldn't be able to do again simply because I've lost over. They told me I've lost 80% strength in my entire arm. And so going through the program at ATF helped me redefine that. And then OEW says, well, hey, we offer skydiving, we offer the Warrior's Voice, which is their speaking program. We offer the Adventure program. We offer archery. And I was like, well, man, that just made sense, which was exciting for me because I got to go to the first archery camp back in November, and loving it, man. Because again, every day it's about finding a way to maintain the right quality of life. So
Mhm.
I run a lot, run, walk, hike. In fact, I'm on a streak now. What's today? The 18th. So
Yep.
19 days doing at least 1 mile consistently, and then I make sure I get at least 10,000 steps in. And a lot of times people look at that and they're like, well, that's kind of crazy. But for me, it's especially living with epilepsy. One of the things that bothers me or scares me is SUDEP. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but SUDEP basically is where people have like a seizure in their sleep
Hmm.
and they don't wake up. They die in
Oof.
their sleep.
Yeah.
And I had started having a lot of seizures in my sleep at one point, and so that's something that scares me. Then even when I wake up, I open my eyes and it's still scary because it's like, okay, is today the day I have the seizure that debilitates me to the point where I can't walk anymore. And there are people that has happened to them,
Sure.
right? So running, walking, hiking, the things I do in terms of movement, archery, those things kind of help me stay even keeled in terms of my my mind space, as
Sure.
they say, and then in addition to that, um, at the Adaptive Training Foundation, I got connected to Charlotte's Web, which is, in my opinion, the top CBD producer in the country. Not only because they work with Johns Hopkins and in terms of providing quality, but they they only produce non-GMO products and stuff, and so their commitment to quality is unmatched in my opinion.
Sure.
And then I had to I started using their products, and that in itself has also helped me to get my seizures under control. So it's and of course I have my daily regimen that I utilize, but it's so in addition to that, these are the things that I've collectively used to get me from where I was in 2018, where suicide seemed like the only way out, to now, instead of being mad at the VA, what I do now is I just connect veterans to resources now. That's what drives me. So I'll promote OEW heavily. When when a veteran tells me or a first responder, hey, um, I'm struggling with this, or I'm looking for this. Oh man, OEW has a community, and I'll share the link for them to become an honoree and move from that perspective, as opposed to being mad as I was before about what the VA was not doing for me.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle right there.
Yes,
It goes dark real quick, especially when you get frustrated at a you know how it is, government apparatus, like, no matter what you do, it's gonna be inefficient.
yeah,
So, it's
right.
like, you gotta take it in stride, but like you said, you can go through the process that you need to get your coverage or whatever you need, while also looking for support, and, I mean, that's why we like OEW so much, that's why we wanted to part with them, we knew right off the bat, they were good people, so that I assume you eventually did get your answers from the VA, right? Because you were definitely injured in the line of duty.
Yes,
Okay.
eventually.
Well, like yesterday, maybe it all came through.
Right?
That's wild. But hey, I mean, I'm glad you were able to find a way to mitigate those seizure symptoms. It's a definitely scary, and I've seen someone suffer from one in public, and it's an awful experience for them. So I'm glad that you kind of had found a way to mitigate that, and mentally too. You're right. I mean, I'm the worst when it comes to running, dude. I am just bad. I used to run all the time, and then I hurt my knee overseas, and now it's a crutch, so it prevents me from running. But you're right, it's such like a mental release. I need to get back into it. I need to stop being a scumbag and do it. That's the only way. So, yeah. So, like, what's next then? Do you have anything that you're working on? Like, what are your goals for the near future, or going forward? Do you have any big plans?
So I have a couple things that I'm working on.
Okay,
Appreciate you asking that.
sure.
So I actually already have a published book that's on Amazon, and one of the things I've done is I set a goal to sell 5,000 copies of that book,
Okay,
at $10 a piece to generate 50 grand. And the goal for that is that that money, 100% of that money is to be donated to organizations like OEW, organizations like Adaptive Training Foundation, 22 Kill, of basically all the organizations that have helped me. But of course, these organizations are helping other veterans and first responders. I mean, literally, that's one of my biggest goals. And I haven't even launched the campaign officially yet.
okay,
I've just been kind of talking to a few people here, word of mouth, and so people have started ordering the book and doing that directly. Now, this week, the goal is to actually get the website up so that they can do it directly. Because right now, people are just ordering directly from me,
okay. So it's not on
which is
it's not
cool
on
because I'm
Amazon yet.
signing the book, right?
Oh, okay,
I, s- I just signed the book. I kind of prefer to put a personalized note into every one of them. But I'm definitely working on getting the website up within the next week so that people can do that and I can get more compressed time frames basically to get more sold opposed to trying to do it individually all the time. That's one thing that's driving me forward. It has me excited. And one of the things I didn't mention. So I'm launching my speaking career, but I'm really a writer first.
hmm,
So for example, you could just put me in a room for about 6, 7 hours with a nice cup of coffee and some music playing and I can write till the cows come home, as they say.
hmm,
And so I have a couple other books that I've written, but they're not published officially yet. So the drive now is to bring those to the forefront. And again, with my books, probably all of them, the ones that I want to release in 2021, 100% of the proceeds are going to go back into supporting the organizations that have helped me get from where I was to where I am today. I think for me, that's very, very, very important because you can't, you can never put a price on quality of life,
hmm. Agreed.
right? I mean, there's no matter even if I were to raise $1 million for all these organizations that help me, it still wouldn't be enough to say thank you for the impact they all have had on my life
Hmm.
and getting me from where I was, as bad as it was, to where I am today, right?
Yeah.
And so that project right there is something that I'm 100% excited about. I'm excited about officially getting my speaking career started and launched. Um, Mr. Ziegler has a saying where he says, "Hope is the foundation of all change." And one of the things I know for a fact for me and individuals that I've seen is that suicide enters the picture when we lose hope.
Hmm.
Now, of course, there's a lot to do with brain chemistry and other things that are happening psychologically to the individual. But once we lose hope, it's much easier to sink further and further and further and further down into that hole. And I believe that not only through my story, but the ability to show people that, hey, you know what, Captain Sparks, you're not here by accident. You're here uh, for a reason, for a purpose. There's something that you were created and designed to do that nobody else on the planet will ever be able to do. Just as unique as your fingerprint is, your voice ID, your retina scan, just as unique as those are, whatever your purpose is, the fabric of history, right, would not be the same if you, Captain Schwartz, weren't here to fulfill whatever your purpose is. And I believe that by in inspiring hope in others, the impact on their purpose will be tenfold. And so that's one of the things I'm excited about doing. Really sharing and talking to individuals, and from adaptive athletes to veterans to, I mean, even people in the corporate space. Because guess what? What the pandemic has done is the pandemic has made it an equal playing field where mental health is concerned. Because now everybody is diminished human contact. You're pretty much, in a lot of cases, locked in your home all day,
Mhm.
and it's affecting all of us.
Sure, and not to mention how many relationships have splintered since this all started. So you're right; it does, it's
Right.
been very even keel. Um,
Yes.
but, yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's definitely, I think the way you mentioned, how do you even repay? How do you even repay it when people like OEW or other organizations actually help you? And I think the way you're doing it is right, is you pay it forward to get other
Right.
people into this positive cycle as opposed to the negative cycle. Because if you yourself, I tell someone about what you told me, and if they tell someone else, then that's good. You're helping people along that chain. So I think that's just as important. I had people when I was younger say a couple words that still to this day are stuck in the back of my brain, and I've remembered it in the those deepest, darkest moments, even on, like, either whether it's on deployment or just having a bad day. uh, yeah, you're right, you can't put a price on it, and you can't underestimate how good that is and how healthy that is. So real quick, the book that's coming out soon, is that going to be on Amazon as too? And also, what's the title? What are you calling
So,
it?
so I, man,
I put you on
my
the spot.
wife, I need to listen to her a lot more. And this is a message for all the men that's listening to the podcast. Listen to your wives. Trust me on this one. I have a couple uh, tools in my tool belt. So one, actually a licensed naturopathic doctor,
Hmm,
licensed by the Department of Health, in holistic healing and all that. So I have a book called Sun Power,
hmm,
and the book basically talks about, the tagline is going back to Eden. It's just basic holistic approach to wellness beyond the parameters of the pharmaceutical world. And for example, like I know of a young lady who, and this is just an example. Um, she has epilepsy, and we were talking one time, and I was telling her about how music, like a lot of times, I know this drives my wife crazy, right? But probably, and I never realized it until after getting the diagnosis. Like I would always have to have headphones on, and you know music in my ear, and then it wasn't until recently, and talking to that young lady, and she was saying, yeah, for her, she has to listen to like heavy based jazz music
hmm.
because the actual frequency soothes her and keeps her calm. Now, think about that. That's her using music as a tool instead of a pharmaceutical.
Sure.
Like that's a holistic approach to your own self-care. And a lot of times that goes out the window. I think I have a pretty unique perspective on that. Then I have another book called Unleashed, and that one is actually about navigating the journey of you know my amputation, that accident, what it did to me mentally, emotionally, and then of course then being gifted, and I say gifted, and I'll tell you why I'm saying gifted in a moment, being gifted um the diagnosis of epilepsy. And I don't know if you've noticed, but since we started talking, I haven't said that I suffer from epilepsy. I said I live with epilepsy,
Mhm.
and that's a different, right? Now, I live with it. I don't necessarily have to suffer from it anymore. In fact, if I'm being honest, because of my epilepsy diagnosis, we're talking today. If you think about it, if I hadn't been diagnosed with epilepsy, I would have never found ATF. I would have never connected to OEW. I probably would be on a different trajectory,
Sure.
right? So there would be no need for Captain Sparks and Trayvon to have a conversation on the 18th of December in 2020, right? So what I've been able to do is see it as the gift it has been in terms of okay, the new relationships, the doorways of opportunity that have opened. In fact, later on this afternoon, I'm speaking on a Zoom for people who are caregivers of individuals with epilepsy. And the reason I was invited to speak on it is because most of the people on the panel are adults with children that have epilepsy. None of them had ever really heard the perspective of an adult living with epilepsy and how that affects things. It's a totally different dynamic. And now I get the opportunity to kind of create some more awareness and some education and enlighten some folks in that regard. So that's two. So there's Sun Power, there's Unleashed, and then I have a series that I've been working on called the Power of Seven series. So it's basically it was an idea. I was driving. I can't even remember what road I was on, but these ducks on both sides of the roads were like these ponds, right? So these ducks were in a line marching across the road. So I stopped and I'm watching them and I'm thinking to myself, well, first of all, they don't care where I got to go. They just sauntering. And then, of course, there's one straggling in the back, and the mama has to kind of come back and nudge him along. And I'm sitting there and I start thinking, there's a lesson to be learned here. So I start thinking, well, we can't get anywhere without a team. Like, well, that's one powerful lesson because no matter who you are, even a tennis player has a team around them. You have your trainer, your coach, all that stuff, your physiotherapist, all that you see to keep you in shape, your nutritionist, all that. You have a team, even though it's considered an individual sport, but we can't do anything without a team. It's always, ducks, they're always moving forward. They're not, if you notice, when they're moving in a line, and sometimes the mama will leave the one straggler no matter what he's doing, and she keeps the rest of them heading forward.
Yep.
So just different little pointers I got, and I said, okay, that'll be a cool book idea. And then from that, I created another book in the series called Seven Powerful Things I Learned from Gardening. You've got to plant the seeds, and sometimes we think we're being buried, but we're actually being planted. You've got to water the garden. You've got to pull weeds, like all these negative things that affect us on a daily basis. And case in point, your spouse. I could say, well, hey, my wife says something to me, and then I get impatient. But then I have to go back and pull that weed out and say, well, okay, you know what? Let me look at that from her perspective, because a lot of times we don't look at it from the other person's perspective. We just assume it's what's in it for me, right? How we look at it. And so that's another book in the series. So those are some of the projects book wise that I'm working on. And then, of course, the next major goal is to get on some speaking platforms and really share this message of hope, especially coming into 2021, where the media has decided, and that's why the podcasting platform is so powerful and so important, because the media has decided that we're going to take the negative narratives and run with those,
Yep.
right?
Oh
But the
yeah.
podcast platform allows individuals like yourself and battle bars and what you guys are doing to now say, okay, well, bump that. Every podcast or every message doesn't have to be negative. There are people out here. I know Jeremy was on before me
Yep.
who are genuinely doing positive things, and those are the people we want to highlight. Those are the people we want to hear from. Now, doesn't mean that every episode is always going to be the smoothest and the easiest, because imagine if you are, let's say, a cop working in this current climate. Every day for you is not probably going to be the best. I know this because my younger sister is a cop. She has shared with me some of the things that she's experienced as a black woman on the police force who's married to somebody that's white. So she's in an interracial marriage
Oh man.
on the police force,
Yeah,
right? So,
that's a whole thing right now.
exactly. Imagine the dynamics of her daily challenges and struggles that she has to deal with.
I
And
can't.
so I'm not, I'm not going to be naive and say, well, every podcast, but maybe the podcast platform gives us an opportunity to hear this woman's story or to hear stories similar to her to hers instead of the ever present consistently negative narratives that, I mean, look at what the election did to our country.
Yeah.
I've seen people who were friends, lifelong friends, stop talking because they were on opposite sides of the fence. And now guess what? The election is over.
Mhm.
The new president is going to be sworn in. How do you fix those relationships? Do you even go back?
Not
Do you
easily.
even
Well, you know what? One of the saddest things too is there. It's not even that they'll friends and relationships can end. Not even because you're on the opposite side. It's just because you don't necessarily 100% agree. So
right?
I had people, because of course the 2020 version of trying to be a badass is I'm gonna delete you off Facebook, which I never do because I don't care. Like I'm not gonna lose a friendship because I disagree with you, no matter how dumb I might think it is. I'm not gonna do that. But like you can be in the middle on anything, but if you're not 100% left or right, you're a scumbag. It's very weird how line in the sand that guy. I mean, now social media has exacerbated it, and
Okay.
so has a lot of the
Yes.
media for sure. I mean, like you said, they definitely drew that line and they filled it they filled that moat with acid because crossing back over is so hard now. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I can't imagine. Yeah, your daughter's perspective's got to be really, really interesting. And you probably heard when I talked to Jeremy. Obviously, we hit on those things that were not good. They were negative, but the whole point at the end was that hey, in reality, there are good things happening here, and we all
Right.
have different perspectives. Doesn't mean anyone's wrong. It doesn't mean everything's perfect, but it doesn't mean the world's ending either. Like there's good things out there, a lot of it.
Yes.
And even your example from when you came to the country and what was it within the first month you had a pretty, I mean, you had
Yeah.
a racial profiling incident, and that would piss me off. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. If I was in your shoes, that would really piss me off, but you didn't lose that hope like you said. You just drove on and you made your did what you want to do with the army and whatnot. So that's the focus of the story now. And again, I'm not speaking from a relatable position because it's different, Um, but I think I almost wonder like if more people did what you did in a situation like that where they didn't see. So you saw that girl do that, right? Like she hit the alarm in the bank, and you didn't decide to hate everyone who didn't look like you, right?
Right.
I think that's important. I don't know. And again, you can tell me if I'm talking out of my you know what, but that's just what I pick up on stories like that.
Well, it's this. It's understanding who I am
Mhm.
from that perspective. And let me kind of expand on that.
Sure.
If if I had responded negatively or anything, would it have changed the fact that she had done that?
Nope.
It wouldn't, right? So the only thing I can control is how I behave in response to anything. And don't get me wrong, I've been in situations where we were on a funeral detail. I'm in the army in uniform, representing the country, saying that I'm standing up for the freedoms of every citizen, defending against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yep.
And we go to a funeral detail, and the wife of the guy who's laying in the casket says, "I don't want that N word holding my husband's casket."
Jesus, are you serious?
Think about that. Think about that. This is we are in uniform,
That's
right?
that's that's one of the more severe things I've heard. That's pretty messed up. Wow.
Exactly. So,
Jeez.
but at the end of the day, I can't control how that woman behaves. I can't control how she feels. I can't control whatever.
No.
All I can do, honestly, is be the best version of who I'm supposed to be. Now, if I'm in a situation where I feel my life is physically threatened, will I defend myself? Yes. I mean,
Of
I
course.
box, kickboxing, I can shoot, I'm an archer, all that stuff. Yes. But for the most part, in order to change the narrative, there's got to be there's got to be a mental revolution. So for me, I choose to navigate this from a mental perspective. I continue to show up every day and serve in a way where, you know what, if I know that you don't like me because I my skin color, I'm gonna kill you with kindness. You got one or two choices. One, your first choice would be to like, man, I can't even stand to be around this dude. Then you have to decide that you have to leave the situation, right?
Right.
The second option you have is to really get to know me as a person and just for a second put aside my skin color. Now, here's the issue with that. The issue with that is that there are too many people pretending that the problem doesn't even exist.
Agreed.
Like
Agreed.
I've had people tell me, "Well, Trayvon, you're a pretty eloquent speaker. You don't seem to have problems with racism." I said, "No, I do have problems with it. I just know how to. I just navigate it from a different perspective.
Sure.
You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
Now, my mom was adamant about being able to communicate and being able to speak and all this stuff. So for me, being able to use words to create an impact is very important. That's something that my mom, I think, I would have to say she blessed us with, right? But every person of color didn't have that, for an example. Every person, so a lot of times, sometimes too, I'll hear people say, well, they see this black person respond in a certain way. Well, yeah, our our experience generally mitigates or controls how we behave.
Right.
So if you've never experienced how to handle that situation, how do you know? Let me give you another example. When I was in the army, I had a soldier that came into my unit, kid from somewhere in Wyoming, and he told me that the town he grew up in, there were no people of color. Right? Like he said, "Hey, Sarge, I don't hate you. I just don't know anybody that looks like you." Like we literally had this conversation, and for me, having been able to sit down and hear this kid's perspective, whether I agreed with it or not, that wasn't the point. The point was, in a situation like that, can we open the door of dialogue to see it from both sides? So
Mhm.
he's explaining to me, hey, I grew up in a town where, in fact, to get to my duty station, I had to I had to drive to a recruiting station in another town to sign up and do all this. And he's explaining this to me. And then he tells me that his father is a member of the Klan.
Oh,
I'm like, oh my goodness.
oh my god.
so
Oh, awkward.
So so when he wrote back home to his dad to tell his dad um, about what was happening in the unit, his dad told him that he needed to write a request letter to change units because he didn't want him having a sergeant who was black. Like this is the culture this kid grew up in. So how am I supposed to treat him? He's my soldier. We're serving in the United States Army. As a non-commissioned officer, or even if I was an officer, how am I supposed to treat this young man? You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's why it's important for me to be in control of how I behave, right? Well, lo and behold, we move forward. This young man ended up marrying a woman of color. So I
Oh. I'm sure the dad loved that.
I don't know what the conversation with his parents were like, but I do know that I ultimately ended up meeting his dad, and at his wedding, I remember his dad actually walked up to him. Now, this is the very same Ku Klux Klan dude
Right.
who told him to leave the unit and all that, and he just actually said, "Thank you for taking care of my son." That's it. You see what I'm saying? Now,
Yeah.
whether he still didn't like me for my skin color or whatever, it didn't matter. But in that moment, he was man enough to walk up to me and say, "Thank you."
I mean, that breaks a barrier right there, though, because I mean, how could you go back to something that is as crap, shitty, really, let's just say, as the KKK, and act and have a conversation with your son, obviously who's married. You know what I mean? Like, how could you even go back with the same
Right,
viewpoint? Because I don't know. I like to think positively. There are a lot of people that leave that lifestyle and for the better, and maybe his son was kind of that door open that you were able to impact that and influence it without necessarily even knowing or planning for it.
right. Yeah.
It's like I said, that's a good story. It's a lot of bad stuff, but it ended up in what sounds like a
Yeah.
good thing. So
And you know what he told me? That kid, he told me, he said, that when they had their first baby, of course, his dad's grandson, he said his dad was almost more excited than his mom was.
yep,
Like even that. So now there's what somebody would consider like a mixed, interracial kid in the mix,
sure,
and the grandfather who was the Ku Klux Klan person, who was this, and who was the one who was like just wow, that grandparent, you know
right,
what I mean? The grandparent that every grandkid wants to have type of deal.
yeah,
So
it's incredible.
yeah,
It's a good ending. I
yeah,
mean, it's all you can ask for these days, right?
yes, yeah,
Well, very interesting. Well, like I said, I'm grateful that you kind of were able to maintain that idea of hope and just how you handle yourself. I can definitely relate to that. You can't control others. You can only control what you do. So why even why fret really? Why stress it? Just
right.
worry about yourself and improve yourself first, and then worry about what comes next. I guess. Um, you said you're gonna have a website for your book, so if we have people listen to this in the future, they could go. Is that set up yet or no?
Now that's coming. All of
Okay,
that is coming.
okay.
It's,
Well, no,
yeah.
once it is, I'll definitely link it to this podcast. So
Okay.
whether people listen on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, or just go to our website, it'll be there. So as soon as you have it, no rush, of course, just send it over. And
Okay.
because I myself, I mean, I would love to, especially the gardening one. That's actually interesting to me because I've heard other ideas that gardening itself, like the actual physical activity, is a
Right.
form of what'd you say, like a natural medication, like the girl listening to certain music. It's
Right. Exactly.
it's a
Exactly. Yeah. It's
mental.
it's it's soothing. It's very soothing.
Oh
Now
yeah,
it's still physical, right? But
yeah.
it's soothing.
Well, I think that physical aspect is a part of it. You need to sweat a little bit sometimes. Even me shoveling snow yesterday with my headphones in was like a moment of zen for me, even though it
Now,
took
where are you based?
I'm in Pittsburgh right now.
Oh, you a
Yeah.
Steelers fan?
I no. So
Oh,
funny story, right? So my parents are from Ireland. Soccer is the sport over there, obviously soccer and
okay,
rugby.
got
So
you,
I, I
got
played
you.
I played soccer all my life. I was going to tell you about that too because I was like, oh wait, what position did you play? Um, but yeah, so they came to the U.S. and they adopted the Ravens because they went to Baltimore. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, so my parents didn't. I don't think they necessarily cared about football, but they adopted it like, hey, we're here, we're in America. So
Got
no,
you.
I don't. I'm not a Pittsburgh sports person, but granted, again, I'm more of a soccer guy. So English Premier League, Manchester United was our family team.
Oh, okay, well, that works then, that
Yeah.
works. That's my I mean, think about it. I I actually went to school for a little bit with Dwight York.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he was a few years ahead of me. So Dwight was born in the sister isle of Tobago, and then he had to move when his career kind of started taking off, and he was getting ready to leave for Aston Villa. And at that time, Trinidad and Tobago was pushing for qualification in the 1990 World Cup. He had to transfer over to Trinidad to live and be with the team and stuff like that. So he
So
went to
so he was
my high
on
school for a
he was on
while.
Manchester United when like what me as a kid would call like their peak years, like during those mid '90s, like 95, 96, 97. I think is when he was there, right? Um,
Wait, let
Something
me
like
see.
that.
Hold on. 90,
Like Ryan
90.
Giggs, David Beckham, like that whole team.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
I remember him like because I
Italian
have
all
I have a bunch of my dad was obsessed, but we have like mugs with their faces on it, and I'm almost positive we had a I'm
that.
almost positive we had a Dwight York one. I didn't know he was from Trinidad and Tobago though. I did not know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Okay,
I mean, hey, that was one of our biggest claims to fame. In fact,
that's awesome.
that was one of the years, I think was it 96 or 97? If I'm not mistaken, when they won that the first treble that they won. So they won the English Premier League, they won the UEFA Cup, and they won the FA Cup that year. So it was
Yeah. Okay. So it was actually 2003 is when he left Manchester United. But yeah, he did a hat trick on a game against Arsenal, and that was his one of his biggest moments. I still remember those games because I went to Liverpool in England and saw a game against Liverpool, and I
ah,
remember seeing him there when I was really really young. Pretty crazy. I don't
gotcha.
even know where I was going with that originally. I don't remember now. Oh, so I support. We go to the hockey games a lot up here. I like the hockey stadium in Pittsburgh. It's pretty cool, and they're very
Gotcha.
passionate fans. So we used to fly a DC Caps flag out front. We don't do that anymore, but
Does Pennsylvania have an MLS team?
if they do, I don't know because I don't really
Okay,
follow the MLS a whole lot. Um,
gotcha.
yeah, my dad was always nice and snooty about it. He's like, "No, we're not gonna watch the MLS."
Oh, really? Oh my
No, but
god.
he didn't. No, I'm making him sound meaner than he was, but he just didn't like American soccer. He didn't like the play style. He didn't like the fact that it's growing. It's grown so much now that it's probably different. But back then, he wasn't a big fan of the leagues or the way they played. Even some of the rules are different, because I used
Yeah,
to referee, so it was a whole
right.
it was a whole thing. But yeah, anyway, sports, good times.
Oh, yeah, always good
But what
times.
about you? Where are you based now?
So my wife and I, we're in, well, right on the outskirts of Dallas, so we're in Grand Prairie, Texas.
Okay. I heard it's a nice area. I've always wanted to go to Dallas. I've never been. I hear Austin and Dallas are pretty cool right now.
So what I love about Dallas, it's a big city with a small town feel.
Sure, sure. Yeah,
That's the best way I describe. Anytime anybody asks me, that's my description. Big
that
city, small town feel.
that's kind of
So
how I describe Pittsburgh. There's a lot of local businesses. There's a lot of big ones, but they all support each other. They're very close. Downtown is a downtown city, but it doesn't feel like it. I don't know. It's nice. It's a nice atmosphere. So, but okay. Well, hey, tell you what. So, any last words of wisdom if I had to put you on the spot? I don't know, anything interesting you wanna tell me, fun fact about you, or just any words of wisdom for anyone who might chime in later?
and what I would close with is to challenge everyone that may hear this. Uh, don't lose hope. And if you found that you have lost hope, look for your why. And your why is your purpose for being here. And a lot of people, they always tell me that, man, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know. But I do know this. Even if you don't know what that purpose is, you're here for a reason. Again, like I said, the fabric of history doesn't move without every individual that's born into it, right? And you have something to contribute. In fact, no matter if we have a million authors, nobody can write the book like you can write it. Nobody can be a captain like you can be, Captain Sparks. Nobody can be the non-commissioned officer like I was. Nobody can be the same father or anything because we each have our own unique place in history in the universal movement of time. And so I would encourage your listeners, hold on to hope because hope is again the foundation of all change. And as long as you hold on to hope, anything is possible.
Amen. Yeah, that's perfect. Definitely gotta put that in a book. Well, hey, Trayvon, again, I appreciate your time. When you have your links ready, shoot them over. I wanna make sure that anyone who is able to listen is also able to check out your books when you get them published. I know I will, so, yeah, shoot me that whenever you have it. But other than that, man, again, it was really nice talking to you. Please, I'd love to talk to you again sometime. Maybe we can catch up next time we have an OEW event. Love to do one of these
Definitely.
in person.
Yep, definitely. In fact, I need to. I got to head over to Battle Bars. I need to order some products because I do a lot of hiking,
Sure.
and I've heard that you guys the Battle Bars are like probably not probably but the best. So I need to add that to my regimen, especially for
Okay.
2021, where I'm going to be doing a lot longer hikes and stuff like that.
Sure. Well, there is a discount code for all OAW honorees that we sent out. I don't know if that's been communicated yet. If not, I'll shoot that to you right after this, so you can get a discount.
Definitely. I appreciate that. Thank you
Yeah, of
for
course.
all that you guys are doing, not just with OEW, but I mean, to be a part of a company that's veteran owned and operated, that matters, right? Because, in fact, this is what I want to close with.
Sure.
This is what I want to close with. Our veterans and first responders are heroes. They get up every day, and whether we see it, whether we hear it or know it, they have signed up to, if needed, make the ultimate sacrifice
Mm,
so that every citizen in this country can be free and enjoy what comes with those freedoms. And I think now is the time that we need to stand up for our veterans and first responders and fight for our heroes just like they fight for us on a daily basis. That's what I want to close
agreed. Yeah, obviously, I couldn't agree more. We're always there to support our I call it red, white, and blue for EMTs, police, firefighters, military, everyone. They're all getting overworked right now, and medical workers too. I feel for all of them. We're trying to support everyone we can. So nothing but good wishes and whatnot to them. We'll do what we can to keep helping. And I know you guys will too. You guys are staying busy. All
with. Yes, sir.
right, man. With that, I will close. Again, thanks for joining, and we will definitely follow up and talk soon. Okay.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to share on your platform today.
Of course, of course. We will chat soon. All right. Have a good day.
All right. You too. Thank you.
Yep. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining again. That was Trayvon Sundiata Ferguson. I think I said his middle name right. Awesome dude, as you just heard. So I will be sharing the links to his books, his personal profile, everything on our website. It's podpage.com/FITFO, FITFO. And obviously you'll be seeing it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, pretty much everything. With that, again, thanks for listening as we talked about some very interesting topics today. And we will have some more coming down the pipeline very soon. Some really interesting individuals that I'm looking forward to talking to. With that, have a good rest of your day.